Welcome to our 2018 PR Trends series from Shift Communications. My name is Christopher Penn, Vice President of Technology. We're going to be covering the upcoming things to watch for in 2018 in the public relations industry in 5 areas: search marketing, social media, earned media, owned media, and paid media. Today, we're going to talk about earned media and what the trends are that are upcoming. The first one, of course, the press release continues its venerable but inevitable demise. Last year in 2017, public relations professionals cranked out something on the order of 250,000 press releases, which is an enormous amount of stuff. However, using our marketing technology to scan those press releases and figure out how often they were, for example, shared on social media, on any social network, and how often they were clicked on, the median number of shares was 0, and the median number of clicks really was like 0 or 1, which basically means that we're creating all this stuff. We're publishing all of these press releases that effectively, other than meeting regulatory compliance, don't do anything. They confer no search value, because Google knocked them out of these search algorithms years ago now. We're talking 2013. They're not being read by anyone other than bots that repost them to other sites. And all they do is confuse and inflate coverage reports. So really, press releases have very little value, and they're not cheap. They are between anywhere from $200 to $1,200, depending on what service you're using. So, should you still be doing press releases in 2018? Well, the answer is, if you're looking for press coverage and traction, the answer is no. If you have to do press releases because you are regulatorily required to do so, if you are a publicly traded company, for example, you are still subject to Regulation FD, public disclosure, and of course the press release is the gold standard for regulatory compliance. So continue to do them if you are a publicly traded company. But what should you do instead of the press release? What is the trend? Well, it's really straightforward. Create content that essentially meets the function of a press release, which is to let people know that you exist and that you have a product or service worth paying attention to, and publish it on your own properties. Publish it on your blog, on your social channels. Publish it on influencers' websites if you have any. Publish it in industry trade publications, not as a press release, like here's the sheet says for immediate release, but as actual bylined or even sponsored content. But if the goal is to get awareness, you have to go where the people are, you have to go where attention is, and you have to publish it in formats that people want. For example, we are talking today on video, because that's what people want. People want to not have to read stuff, to be able to listen to it in their car or on the train or watch it on their phone. So take the content you would put into a press release and put it into a format like this that makes more sense. Trend number 2 in earned media is the hyper-segmentation of news, the hyper-segmentation of PR. As a result, society in general and social media in particular have created these hyper-focused segments of the audience. So the idea in public relations is an audience for brand or your company, or if you work in the industry for your clients, is really antiquated. It's very, very 2015, if you will, in that you don't have one audience anymore. You have dozens or maybe even hundreds of audiences. Think about every company at the very least is going to have like 4 or 5 audiences, right? You have your employees, you have your advocates, you have your investors probably, you have your competitors, and then in the public relations, there are multiple publics. There are strategic customers who are high value. You have sort of test drivers, folks who are checking things out. Think about the buyer's journey. Think about the customer journey. Every stage of the customer journey, in a lot of ways, is its own audience. So if you are sending out public relations material to the audience, there is no audience, and as expressions go, if you're publishing something for everybody, you're really not publishing for anyone. So you're going to have to start hyper segmenting your content. The advertising world has figured this out a while ago with things like programmatic and custom audiences and remarketing and retargeting. We have to apply these techniques and these technologies to the public relations industry. If you've got a product announcement, don't publish it to everybody. Publish it to the people who use the product, who would actually be interested in that feature, and even the people who are interested in that feature or that service or that particular niche product. It's not going to be every customer you have. It's going to be only the customers who care about that particular thing. One of our B2B tech clients has this server device that maybe like 100 people in the world care about, but those 100 people really care about this thing. So when they publish something to that audience, their audience really cares about it. So segment the living daylights out of your audiences. Help your company, help your brand, help your marketing team build out those segments as to who you want to communicate with. Do I want to communicate with top tier investors? Do I want to communicate with the press? And which publications do I want to talk to? Who do I want to talk to? Build remarketing and retargeting lists. Hyper segment your email database so that when you send out news that's relevant, you can send it to just the people who are going to care about that sort of thing. Use remarketing bugs. So Facebook pixels, Twitter pixels, Google AdWords pixels, all these different tracking technologies give us the ability to track the audiences on our digital properties, particularly our website. Don't just put one up on the website. Every single product, every single service, every single division should have its own tracking pixels so that if you are, say, a pharmaceutical company, you have a different audience who just for the headache relief product, and you have a different audience just for the stomach upset, and you have a different audience for just for the oncology, and you have a different audience for the liver and endocrine audience. And every single little tracking pixel gathers its own audience. Then when you want to send news out, you can send ads to just that particular audience and hyper segment your market so that you get in front of the people who care most about the thing that you're talking about. So that's trend number 2, hyper segmentation. If you're not doing that already, this is the year to get on board with learning these technologies. Look to the world. That is where the majority of these technologies exist. And the good news is, particularly for public relations professionals, what you've been spending on a press release will get you, 2 or 3 ad campaigns, small, hyper-targeted campaigns. If you become proficient at these technologies, you can spend that $200 on that press release for $200 of advertising just to this one niche audience about your one product, and you will see wonderful results. Trend number 3 is reputation is your brand. This is a world now of radical transparency where everything is out in public and your reputation is on the line. There's a sub-segment of this which I call the fall of heroes, which is there are enormous numbers of people in Hollywood, in industry, in government, in every organization who are being properly held accountable for misconduct, for behaviors that were inappropriate or outright criminal. This is going to continue. This is going to continue. It's going to accelerate, and it should. Let's be clear. People who have done wrong things should be held accountable for those things. But it also means that you are going to get one heck of a crisis communications workout in the years to come. And when you're doing any kind of public relations campaign, publicity campaigns, the amount of time you spend on vetting and investigating and background investigation and checking up on people and doing your diligence on your spokespeople, on your executives, on your influencers, on anybody who is public facing at your company is going to double or triple or maybe even increase by an entire order of magnitude. You have to do your due diligence because we are at a point where your reputation is your brand. And if you have an executive who is convicted of sexual misconduct or an influencer who is posting videos of things horribly inappropriate on their YouTube channels, that's going to do serious damage to your brand, particularly if what's being shared is material to the operation of your brand. So some tempests and teapots in the past, particularly on social media, someone posted an insensitive tweet that was temporarily damaging, but as long as it wasn't core to the behavior of to the product itself, it generally went away. Today, thanks to these lovely smart devices that we all are surrounding ourselves with all the time, if someone records an interaction with your brand, with an executive, with a spokesperson, whoever, that in which it showcases damaging perspectives on the product or service you offer, is going to have lasting impact. Ask any of the airlines who've been shown breaking things and beating up passengers and stuff, how it's impacted their business, because this is something where misconduct has materially changed and impacted the product or service itself. What people are buying, they want to buy that thing, and when that thing is broken, whether it's contaminated food, whether it's beating up your customers, that makes people go, I don't really want to purchase that anymore. So be aware, trend number 3 that's going to continue, and then you are going to have one heck of a crisis communications work out in the next couple of years. Reputation is your brand. Make sure that you vet the living daylights out of everybody you work with, because if you don't, it's going to come back to bite you. And number 4, the fourth and last trend in earned media in this segment is the destruction of trust. Not just the political headlines of the day, not just the various people yelling fake news and things like that. It is broader than that. If you look at the Edelman Trust Barometer, Pew Research, the Pew Internet Center, if you look at any of these surveys of the general population in most countries, not just where I am in America, but across the world, people's trust in institutions, in the legacy institutions, the news, the print, the newspaper, the radio, even big companies, big technology companies like Facebook and Google and stuff, trust is on a decline. People don't trust that these institutions have their best interests in mind. They don't trust that what they're being told is true. And even though they consume media at a crazy rate, they don't necessarily trust it. And so where is trust moving to? Well, trust is moving to individuals, to these. Remember, the hyper-segmentation of audiences is not just about talk about the thing that audience cares about. It is also about whether that audience trusts this little bubble. We are all living in these very tiny media bubbles now. We are defined by the 100 or 200 or 300 friends we have on Facebook. And that's our reality. And so for what we need to do as public relations professionals, we need to understand and be able to operate in these bubbles and build ambassadors into all these little bubbles that people have, so that we can be trusted, that our audiences will trust us, trust our brand. And that goes kind of back to what we're talking about with reputation as brand. If you do not build trust for your employees, for your customers, for your investors, you're going to have a really, really hard time, because the traditional institutions that public relations relied on in the past are under siege, and they're not going to help, or at least they're certainly not going to have the impact that they used to. So you now need those brand ambassadors. You now need those influencers. You now need the micro-influencers. You don't necessarily need to have a Kardashian in your stable, and probably don't unless you're like a fashion brand. Certainly if you're a B2B brand, you don't need a Kardashian. But you need to have people that everyone else has a degree of trust in. So when you're doing your influencer marketing, when you're doing your influencer analytics, which is the precursor to influencer marketing, be looking for who is trusted the most, who is talked about the most, who does everyone else talk to, even if that person doesn't do a whole lot of talking themselves, and focus on building relationships to those people, to those communities, so that your audience, your customers, your advocates, your evangelists trust you, so that they have that relationship directly with you. You cannot, as a public relations professional, rely on an intermediary institution, the media, the publications, the social networks. You cannot rely on them as the trusted intermediary, because nobody trusts them. Your goal as a public relations professional is to get your public to trust you directly, to interact with you, to visit your website, to talk to you on social media, to pick up the phone and call. This is going to mean, for a lot of public relations professionals, we're going to be going in places we didn't think to go before. We didn't spend a whole lot of time before. If you're not spending an hour a week in your customer service department, hearing what customers are saying to people, to your company, if you're not reading the customer service inbox, if you're not seeing the inquiries come in from the website, you're missing a critical part of what it means to be a public relations professional in 2018. you have got to have your finger directly on the pulse of the public that you want to relate to, and not rely on the intermediaries. So those are the 4 big trends in earned media. In the next post in the series, we're going to look at owned media, some of the major trends that are happening within the media properties that you own. But it's really important with these 4 trends in earned media: the death of the press release, hyper-segmentation, the destruction of trust, and your reputation as your brand, that you take these solutions that we've talked about here and we've shared here and push them forward and take action on them right away. Start creating your own content. Get really good at ad tech and segmenting your audience. Vet the daylights out of everybody who speaks publicly for your company, and own your audience, own that relationship to your public. Do those things and you will insulate yourself from these trends or make them work for you. Thanks for watching. Please make sure to follow us at ShiftComm on Instagram, on Facebook, and of course on Twitter. Visit our website, shiftcomm.com, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks for watching.